This is the Star Wars podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're here discussing Star Wars The Acolyte, Season 1, Episodes 1 to 8.
Everything that happened here. Oh, because you didn't want me to become a Jedi. I didn't do this. Sol lied to you. He blamed me. Sol never blamed you. He tried to teach me to accept that someone that I love could be capable of this level of destruction. And I failed. I could never learn to calm my negative emotions. My hatred of you, my grief over our mother. So I never became a Jedi. And I guess in the end you got what you wanted.
Welcome back, fellow acolytes. Oh, I've always wanted to say that. This is TV Podcast Industries. This is the Star Wars podcast, and we are taking a sojourn back on Season 1 of The Acolyte, from Episodes 1 straight through to 8, and our thoughts on the season. I am one of your hosts, John.
You're the host, Derek.
And rounding out this trio of masters, but there should be a rule of 2. We'll see. I am Chris.
We'll see how long your internet lasts for Chris. By the end of it, it might be just 2.
Yeah, that's true.
Only joking. Chris's internet's amazing.
Yes. No, it's not. Not today. We will see how this ends.
Absolutely. Yeah, welcome back to the Star Wars galaxy. Far, far away and even further back in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Miles back in time.
Yeah.
The first live action Old Republic.
That's right.
Yeah. It is. Old droids. Old lightsaber tech. Old Jedi robes. Yeah. Everything's old, but it's new again.
Absolutely. More uniformed Jedis. The Jedis looked way more standard. Proper kind of like priest sort of standard robes.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to say is they added some color to the uniforms they had under, but those brown robes, seriously, I was just like, come on, give us a bit of grey, give us a bit of black in there, maybe a bit dash of white.
Absolutely.
But it's just like, it was just like, guys, not everything needs to be a brown robe. I understand Obi-Wan Kenobi set it down when he was in Tatooine, and that was where we got it from. But come on, give me that colour.
But he was in a desert. He was in a desert. He was trying to blend in.
Yeah, to the rocks. I know. Yeah. Where's that pink robe?
Absolutely.
But overall, I think that's kind of the point of the Acolyte show and where we're setting this story, this tale of the Jedi, because they are in power. They are effectively the police force for the galaxy, seemingly, so they are much more uniformed, as you say. There's even some interesting touches on Padawans. All have the same uniform, and then when they move on to Master, they get to change the uniform. They get to get that brown cloak as well. So there's those interesting touches in the background that I'm sure we probably would have gotten into if we were doing this as we normally do our podcast on one episode at a time. This time we're covering the entire season. We've mentioned before the reason for that is because the boys came out at the same time, and we didn't have any capacity to cover both shows at the same time weekly. At the moment, we've got a lot going on, so we are going to look back at the season of The Acolyte and talk about some of your feedback that we got in on the final episode for The Acolyte as well.
Absolutely. And I, for one, will not be looking back in anger.
There you go, John. There you go. Little oasis to kick us off.
Yes. But before we get into our spoiler-filled review of Season 1 of The Acolyte, please remember, fellow acolytes, to pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast on any Acolyte or Padawan podcast player of your choice.
And you can also find our coverage of every episode of The Bad Batch over there. You can find our coverage of Ahsoka, the live-action series, over there as well. And you can also get our coverage of this year's Tales of the Empire as well. A really good animated series with just 8 episodes. Really good. So you can get
loads
all
of stuff
that
over there, as well as the boys that we were covering during this period as well.
Exactly.
Of the Old Republic.
Yes, exactly.
And of course, if you want to get in contact with us on any of the shows that we cover, you can of course send your emails into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can join us over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Absolutely, yeah. We'd love for you to join us over there on the Facebook group. The spoiler posts up for each episode. Actually, you can go over there if you want to discuss individual episodes with all of the other fellow acolytes. Chat about them over there and all the other shows that we're covering. So you can chat about any of the shows after they've aired as well.
Yes, but let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion. Derek, who gave us what, where, when, how, and why for episodes 1 to 8?
Because we're covering all the episodes, there's a lot here. So I'm just giving you the general facts about each of the people that are involved. The showrunner for the show is Leslye Headland, probably most well known as the co-creator of Russian Doll, the Netflix series with Natasha Lyonne. Excellent 2 seasons of that show. Really, really well worth a watch if you want to see something else outside of the Star Wars universe that Leslye Headland was involved in. But apparently she was at the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker when she was first approached to take on a Star Wars series, and her first idea that she came up with was, I'd love to go into the Old Republic and see the bad guys and see their side of things, their side of the tales. That all started off the idea of the Acolyte that long ago.
Excellent.
No,
yeah. I think it's a really good take, actually. Yeah. I know that there was some Bioh sort of Old Republic,
Knights of the Old Republic.
Video games, which the adverts for them, the cinematic adverts for them were just incredible.
Yeah.
And then you got the game.
No. So BioWare's original Knights of the Old Republic and 1 and 2, they were fantastic. Very old looking.
Yeah.
For dated now.
Yeah.
But for back then, they were amazing. Fantastic RPGs. There is the Star Wars The Old Republic. Yeah. Not the Knights of the Old Republic, but The Old Republic, which is the MMO, which is still going to this day, no longer produced by BioWare, that do some of the best cinematic CGI based, and there's 1 or 2, they did this whole, almost a movie, you can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Which is about 2 brothers and like they're the light and dark and all that. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And then there's the game on that one.
Yeah.
I will agree. The MMO, and then there's the game. But the original 2 RPGs, as a OG gamer, back when Xbox came out and Knights of the Old Republic came out, I was like, this is the bomb. Because back then, I actually said, this is the bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't agree with you on that one, I'm afraid, Chris. But I get where you're coming from. Yeah. You can't play a game at that level of just gorgeousness, cinematic.
Yeah.
But
now you can. Yeah. Now you can.
Like I would hope that there will be some inspiration kicking off now that we can set lots of things in the Old Republic universe, like new games. You know, we don't have to always keep coming back to the Skywalker saga now. So hopefully we'll get more games of the quality of the Jedi Survivor and games that have that quality of graphics and that quality of gameplay set in the Old Republic. I hope that's something that they do in the future. So really cool that Leslye Headland went back to this era for her first Star Wars show.
It's a really good choice, I think.
Yeah.
And let's go through the directors for the show. Leslye Headland herself directed the first 2 episodes of the season for the show, putting her stamp on the season. Kogonada, another director for the show, a Korean-American director, directed episode 3 and episode 7. Alex Garcia Lopez directed episodes 4 and 5, and previously he directed episodes for The Punisher, Daredevil, Luke Cage, and The Witcher, all of which we've covered here on TV Podcast Industries. And finally, Hanelle Culpepper directed episodes 6 and 8 of the series, previously directed 2 episodes of Gotham John, and 3 episodes of Star Trek Picard. Again, 2 other shows that we've covered here on TV Podcast Industries. Yeah. It's always nice to see our kids go out into the world and direct different shows that we're covering, isn't it? Massive other universes.
I mean, certainly for Hanelle Culpepper, you know, Gotham is a good distance in the past, a bit like the Old Republic with regards to our podcasting now.
10 years, John.
At this stage.
So, we're in our 10th year.
It certainly was. So, I think Yes, the end of February 2014, indeed.
Yeah, exactly. The writer's room for this show is stacked as well. Again, Leslye Headland, the showrunner, is leading up that writer's room. Jasmyne Flournoy as writer's assistant on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then moved on to become one of the writers in the writer's room in here. Adana, another one of the writers. Charmaine DeGrate, who was a writer on House of the Dragon, season 1 as well. Jason Micallef, another writer. Jocelyn Bioh, who was a writer on Russian Doll with the showrunner. Claire Kiechel, who was a writer and story editor on The Watchmen, another excellent show that we covered here on the podcast. Jen Richards as well. Eileen Shim, who was a writer on House of the Dragon season 1 and stayed on for season 2 as well, and which is airing at the moment as well. And finally, Cameron Squires is the final member of the writing room, and he was a writer and story editor on WandaVision.
Cool. Excellent.
So look at the talent you got in there. You got Russian Doll from Netflix. You got House of the Dragon, the excellent Game of Thrones spin-off, Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision, 2 great Marvel shows, as well as Watchmen, one of the best comic book adaptations or comic book extended universe stories, I guess.
Yeah.
That's out there. So great stuff.
Really good stuff.
So John, do you want to tell us what they gave us in a Star Wars way with your synopsis of The Acolyte season 1?
Sure. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, a century before the rise of the Galactic Empire, the Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic bask in an era of unprecedented peace. Yet darkness looms as Jedi Master Indara falls victim to a mysterious assailant. Osha Anasaia, a former Padawan turned Mechnek, is wrongfully accused of the crime and pursued by Jedi Knight Yord Fandar and his Padawan Tacy Loa. As fate intervenes, Osha discovers a shocking truth. Her presumed dead twin sister May is alive and the true culprit. Jedi Masters Sol, Venestra Roa, and Padawans Jackie, Lon, and Yord embark on a perilous quest to unravel the conspiracy. Meanwhile, May, under the influence of a shadowy master, wages a deadly game against the Jedi, targeting Masters Torbin, Indara, Sol, and the Wookiee Kelnaka. On the desolate planet of Brendok, the origins of the twins are revealed, tied to a coven of force-wielding witches led by Mother Anasaia. A fateful decision by Osha to embrace the Jedi path set in motion a chain of events that will shatter the galaxy. But as the hunt for May intensifies, a fallen Jedi, known only as Quimir, emerges as a formidable adversary. The fate of the Jedi Order hangs in the balance as the dark side of the Force grows stronger. A new era dawns filled with treachery, loss, and the uncertain path of destiny.
And Yoda.
Indeed.
Spoilers.
And Yoda.
And Yoda. God, he's so ancient, that one.
He is. No wonder he said, when 800 years old you are, look as good you will not. So
Absolutely.
he's obviously going to be there 100 years beforehand.
He never looked good because he was a green kind of thing.
I know. I was watching it the second time, the last episode. I know we're skipping literally to the last second of the show, but we're going to talk about the whole episode. But I was watching it and going, oh, they didn't even put a brown hair toupee on him or anything like that. He's still got wispy grey hair from the back. He doesn't even get any lines, but he's still got wispy grey hair 100 years beforehand.
He could have had long flowing locks done in a perm. That could have been the thing.
I was expecting him to have a lot of them have that kind of ponytail with the actual metal bits and I was expecting him to have a white ponytail with bits down the back of his neck with his ears sticking out. Basically, I was expecting that with a mohawk. This was Yoda during his punk years.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Or maybe a mullet and a moustache.
Yeah.
Hey, if he's gonna go mullet, he's gonna go full Bottas on it. He's going Bottas, the F1 driver. Mm-hmm. He's going in the Aussie style mullet, business up front, party in the back, Yoda.
That is so awful. That is such an awful haircut.
I was thinking maybe he would be doing kind of a Benjamin Button thing where he was just taller And just because he shrinks as he gets older.
Maybe. Yeah. But all I'll say, when 700 years old you are, Chris, maybe you won't be going through your punk phase at that stage.
Yeah. So. Hey, who knows? Maybe 900 is the limit, right? But 700, it's the midlife crisis moment. He's bought a Porsche. He has a couple of an affair. Who knows what he's going through, right? This is midlife crisis Yoda.
So we've literally talked more about Yoda than we have about the series, and he's in it for 2 seconds right at the end of the series.
So let's get into it.
Let's get into our discussion about the Acolyte. Where do you guys want to start? Where do you want to kick it off? Do you want to give an impression of what your overall feeling in the series is? Do you want to keep that towards the end as we talk about some of the big pushes that happen in the series? What would you want to start with?
I think it'd be good to have, just kind of overall thoughts on it, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Derek, off you go.
I enjoyed the show at the end of the series, by the end of the series. I would think my biggest challenge with this show is setting a conspiracy show in the Star Wars universe is not doing the showrunner or Star Wars as a whole any favors, because Star Wars fans are out there and they want clues. They want to be able to be told things that only they'll know, that they've been so invested in Star Wars for 40 years that they want to be the ones that go, well, I know who that character is and I know who that character is. There are only 3 characters, including Yoda, that have ever appeared outside of this show. Master Vernestra has appeared in 1 novel. We have Yoda and we have Darth Plagueis, who appeared in the background in the final episode. So those are the only 3 characters that appeared, and everything else is brand new for this show. If you do that, you release the show weekly, the Star Wars fans are going to attack you for changing things. And by the end of the series, everything that was complained about by fans watching the show had been resolved. But of course, that is not going to endear yourself to a massive fandom like Star Wars. And I'm not saying you can't do different things in the Star Wars universe, but doing it has a massive risk attached to it. So I don't know whether this was the best show set in the Old Republic that they could have done to kick things off. But by the end of the series, it had resolved into a show I actually did enjoy. I liked the idea of it. But when you're trying to keep information back from an audience to have a big reveal at the end, I don't know whether that was managed very well for my expectations week to week. I don't know whether I would have stuck with it. In fact, to be honest, if it was a completely different show, like, for example, if this was like that crappy Rebel Moon movie that was based off a Star Wars script that Zack Snyder did, I didn't get through half an hour of that movie because I wasn't invested in the Star Wars universe or the universe that he was trying to build. So I don't know whether I would have stayed with Acolyte if it wasn't Star Wars Acolyte because of how it was presented. But I really did enjoy it by the end and the reveals that were there. How about you, Chris?
I'll jump in. This for me suffered from that they haven't learned how to tee up an end of an episode. This felt written in a strange way. And I don't know. We know the MCU can do that cliffhanger. Now, Amazon do it best. Netflix actually pioneered it. Like, we've seen it with the Umbrella Academy and like the Daredevil show and the Defender shows that we covered, where they set up the episode and it's, you pay off what just happened in the last episode, you tee up some good stuff, and then you resolve part of it, and then you leave a cliffhanger to basically make you want to either binge into the next episode or build up enough conversation that the next week you're gagging to know what happened, and you build this fervor, and people come to a podcast to speculate and discuss and review what happened. This, unfortunately, parts of this didn't make me go feverishly go, oh my god, I want to go, and I'm dying to the next episode. So I did watch this in chunks of 2 and kind of as I kind of caught up in bits, but I wasn't. We didn't actually and that's how I knew I wasn't heavily invested. Now, before I finish that sentence, I enjoyed it by the end, similar to you, Derek. Yeah. By the end of the show, I was like, you know what, that was actually good. Looking back as a whole, it was good. But we didn't actually discuss it much as off air between ourselves. We were watching it, but we weren't, hey, did you get this? Did you check this? Or like, did you know that this was, oh my god? And that's how I knew I wasn't, it wasn't connecting as much with me. Yeah. And it should. I love the Old Republic. I played Knights of the Republic 1 and 2 back to front quite a lot. I've started some of the comics that they're running in the High Republic stuff. So all of this should connect with me, basically with the Jedi height of the power, like the cool whips of the new Jedi, the Jedi with lightsaber, things like that where I'm like, but unfortunately parts of it just didn't really come together in a way that I think really should have melted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This felt like it was trying to do a criminal, like you said, that mystery noir, where it's like, it's trying to be almost a cop procedural mystery.
But isn't that the weird part about it? I don't want to go too much into this because I know John will want to hear what your opinion is. But isn't that the weird part about it? You think when it's setting up the show that it is this mystery noir, but actually what you think are your detectives are the people that committed the crime in the first place, basically. Yeah. So that's all great twists if you're doing something like that. But I think the reason it isn't connecting or didn't connect, and the reason why we didn't all discuss it together, Chris, was because there weren't those moments of, did you see Luke Skywalker turn up on that episode? Did you see Chewbacca appear on that episode? There weren't any of those moments because it's so disconnected from the Star Wars universe, and the treatment of the storyline is so different from anything we've seen from the live action or animated shows before as well. So,
fair.
Yeah.
John, what about you?
So, just before I do
yes.
Yeah, before I do actually say that, it's just, Chris, you did have a Stewie Griffin moment there in your monologue where you said cool whips.
Yeah. Cool whips. I love the cool whips.
Yes, so I did quite like that. So, I'm kind of with you two, to be honest, on this. I think by the third or fourth, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about this show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got and I can't remember which episode exactly it was. I think it was episode 5. And it was like, that was, okay, this has this has brought it, dragged it into caring about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Episode 5 was the episode set where we finally got to see the Sith Master, I guess we think. So that's the big moment, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's so divorced from the Star Wars lore that we know, yet it is obviously in that world, and there's plenty of other material around that. I think if you're bringing it to this point, you want to invest in the characters, and it was really difficult to understand that. Lots of stuff I loved in here around the convergence and, effectively, Osha and May, being of one. Like the idea, one of them is evil, one of them is good.
The dyad, as
and
they call it in Star Wars, yeah.
So I kind of really like that. I think it's also just the fact that, it depends how you get to the reveals that they do as well. And I just felt, rather than trying to do a big reveal in a era that isn't that well known to a lot of people,
absolutely,
go through it. Like, like brilliant seeing Darth Plagueis, but just have him there.
Yeah.
Like, and the interactions and how it's all complicated or whatever. But I mean, anyway, in the end, I got to really, enjoy this. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like, sexy Siths as well? I mean, or even just that notion of,
sexy Siths,
it's an important dynamic that actually, potentially these two, the two, have some kind of chemistry there, but it wasn't even that. It's just, they felt like they were becoming friends, weirdly. So anyway, there was a lot I really enjoyed in this, but I don't know whether I really thought it it didn't hit the ground running.
Yep.
I think it needed to be less sort of massive revelatory at the end and have those moments at each episode being revelatory, like you say, Chris. And I think,
let's talk about it, because there are reasons within the writing as to why all the reveals happen at the end of this series. Yeah. So let's talk about that a bit more in depth. But I suppose the other aspect of it, as I said, setting a mystery show where you're keeping all those reveals back in an era where we don't know anything about the characters makes it very difficult to connect with them. But also another big writing choice that they made is having the unreliable narrator. We're following characters who are being told are good because they're Jedi, or being told are bad because they're Sith. And by the end of the series, they've all switched positions to good and bad, to different effects. All the all the good guys are bad guys, all the bad guys are good guys by the end of the series. They're all interesting ideas, but very difficult to latch on to those characters.
Definitely.
As you go. Like, I remember one of the first things I saw about The Acolyte after it aired, we were away on holidays and didn't see the episodes until after we got back, but one of the first things I saw was they put Carrie-Anne Moss in the poster and then killed her in the opening scene. That's it. I'm out. I'm gone from this show. And she was in 4 more episodes. But because of the narrative way that they'd chosen to tell the story, you instantly turned off people who tuned in to watch Carrie-Anne Moss. So it was a really interesting experiment for Star Wars, but I'm just not too sure whether connected with the people that they wanted to actually watch the show.
Exactly. And I think even having the 2 flashback episodes...
Well, we'll definitely talk about that in our first Saber Point. As we usually do, we pick our Saber Points, which will be things that should cover, this time, the entire series of the show. So let's start off with Saber Point number 1. So really the show, as we said already in kind of the intro there, the show is set around a central mystery which you're trying to discover. And let's just talk about that, I suppose, is our big point. What's the big reveal in the show? The big reveal is actually talked about right at the end of the series. When Osha and May are splitting up for the final time, they say their rhyme to each other. The "you are with me, I am with you, always one, born as two." That in itself is a massive reveal. It's revealed that May and Osha were created from the Force by their mother. They aren't twins at all. They're actually one being created from the Force, split into 2. So not twins, not sisters. They are the same being split into 2, which is an interesting reveal at the start. Saul was concerned about that, about the amount of power being in the hands of someone that's outside of the controls of the Jedi, accidentally killed their mom, and thought that May was dead. So because the mom and May were dead, the people that were involved in the creation of May and Osha, only Osha left, they decided to hide this fact from the rest of the galaxy. There's nothing to prove that this creation happened. So it's hidden. And he did this at the request of Master Indara, who's Carrie-Anne Moss's character, and her Padawan had gone a bit crazy from them being on the planet for a bit too long.
Torben.
Torben had rushed in and almost got himself killed. And then as a reaction to all of this, that's what sets off May on her killing spree, effectively going after killing them all, because Saul has covered this up, and Dara's covered this up, Torben and the Wookiee Jedi, they've all covered this up. So that's kind of the big reveal at the end of that, because of that denial. So May trains with the dark side, trains with Khmer, and gets her revenge on all of these Jedi. So that's the big reveal at the end, the central mystery, the big reveal at the end of the story. What did you think of that being the big reveal, and revealed in basically episodes 7 and 8 of the show, that this is everything that's actually happened?
Like, I did like this reveal. I mean, firstly, I love that they had witches here. I mean, I think on Brandok, I think coming from Ahsoka, I think having the witches of Dathomir, it's really interesting. And seeing this again, very powerful witches and very powerful abilities to control the Force with, this convergence that they were investigating here. And
it's almost a tapping into the Force. We've heard about the Force as something that penetrates and binds you, is the way it was always talked about before. Here they're talking about pulling on the threads of the Force to use it and gain its power that way. So
I really like this kind of idea. For me, right up there with Force wielding witches. The death of these, I mean, again, it plays into sort of our coverage of the Bad Batch from the last season as well, where, you saw the Empire taking young, Force-sensitive people and different species from their mothers. And here you have the same thing happening again with the Jedi. And again, that kind of, similarity with the Sith, but also it being looked on as more pious. But in this instance, it's not, because you have this coven of witches effectively wiped out for seemingly being, bad, evil, dangerous, even though, the Jedi, for all their supposed calmness and meditation, aren't able to talk to them. I like the internal conflict around that within the group itself. I mean, I do think Torben was a little bit whingy,
just a bit,
which I was really surprised at from the actor who, you know, has been in Game of Thrones and in, was it 1916, 1917, the movie and
normally a great actor,
I just felt his character was really sort of whiny, and actually it's because like he just wanted to get back to Coruscant, that effectively everything goes belly up, and the whole situation, that some of the motivations didn't feel right.
Well,
I wish they had kind of started off so we learned more about the witches, and, you know, because even with the little amount of time, you got the sense of actually a loving mother witch.
100%.
And
100%. This all comes from Saul thinking that the witches having this access to the power is a threat to the Jedi power. They're not under the control of the Jedi. Jedi are supposed to be the guardians of the galaxy, let's say, for want of another series.
Sure.
But that's where it all stems from on his side. Torben getting frustrated as I went into the Jedi Order to learn how to be a Jedi, and here I am taking scientific samples from a planet for 5.5 months. Can we just go home? Yeah, I kind of get it. He's, you know, that's a little bit Anakin Skywalker, the whiny Padawan. So I kind of get that from him. But I just want to quickly, I know we're going to go over to you, Chris, about this, but I just want to quickly say there's the scene where we see older Torben 13, 16 years later, or 15 years later, where he's been meditating for years and growing the beard. And I was like, that beard looks weird. That beard looks so weird. And we hadn't seen him as the young Padawan up until that time. And then I realized, oh, this is baby-faced Dean Charles Chapman, who we saw in Game of Thrones, throwing himself out a window. He did not grow that beard. Somebody stuck some cotton wool on his face. Definitely. He does not look any older than 22 or 23. So I just that took me out of his scene in the older age a bit. But anyway, sorry for interrupting you, John. Sorry, you had more to say about the Central Mystery.
No, so it was just like I enjoyed the Central Mystery, but narratively, some of the sort of reasons for the actions that happen, none of it really connected with me. And so I kind of just lost it. Like, I think having a focus on Osha and May with that coven for part of this, you know, and even if it was flitting between there and Coruscant to build the story. And that's the thing. I felt like it was, in the end, the central mystery was to say, you know, maybe the Jedi aren't as good as we all think they are, fine. But also then just to almost have the Yoda moment and, you know, the Darth Plagueis moment. So, and it kind of got lost. But I mean, luckily, Episode 5 rescued it for me.
Yeah.
And the motivations were good. All of this, the reveal of May being alive, not having died.
Yeah. But that was the end of the first episode as well. I'll tell you, the one thing that broke it for me, that really annoyed me in the series about how the story was told. Effectively, in episode 2, we get Saul telling May the story of what happened when he was able to take her from her family. And it's all a lie. That's what we find at the end of the series. It's all a cover-up. He's been covering it up, not telling May the story. But they did the flashback episode where we see May and Osha with their family, the witches on Brandok. And that is the story that Saul has just told in the previous episode. And it was an entire episode of another lie telling us, just showing us on screen what Saul had told us. So it felt like a waste of an episode, and that absolutely should have been a real central episode to the series. You get to know these kids and what their lives were like before the Jedi came in and took one of them away. It would have been a much more interesting series had you put a bit of the doubt in our minds, set that seed in our mind in episode 3 that maybe Saul's not telling the truth. But it was just the tale he told in the previous episode, and you had to wait another week for a bit more of the story. That by that stage you were going, well, this seems a bit odd. May's out there killing Jedi. episode 1, she kills one. Episode 2, she kills another. Episode 3, episode 4, she'll kill the fourth. And then what have we got left of the series? So,
there were more Jedi deaths than Order 66 here. Like, it was proper bloodbath for the Jedi.
Yes, before any other Star Wars fans get on, we know there was about 50,000 Jedi that died during Order 66.
Yeah, no,
a lot.
But there was
a lot of on-screen deaths.
And I mean, I have to say, I liked that sort of unflinching, sort of, they're not immortal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was really good.
Absolutely. What about yourself, Chris? What about your thoughts on the central mystery and the reveal?
For me, thematically, this should have been something I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Thematically, the storyline here is the Jedi. Mm-hmm. Are we the bad guys?
Yeah.
Basically, it was like the Jedi, it's trying to flip it. The witches should have been the good guys.
Yeah.
Because up until, unless you basically play any of the Jedi games, usually the witches are kind of more leaning towards the bad. Like in Ahsoka, they're aligned with the Empire. Mm-hmm. In a lot of the other shows, typically they are more aligned towards the bad guys. So here, essentially, we are seeing the witches being the good guys, and the Jedi, it is revealed to be the bad. Typically, we would also see then maybe there's a singular Jedi character who learns this big reveal and goes, no, and then brings it to the council and tries to resolve it. It didn't earn any of this. What we see is the Jedi still being bad guys, the witches are killed off, and then unsurprisingly, the ending of the central mystery as it resolved is, do you know what, we're just going to wipe the memory and it's going to continue on. And for me, when you're trying to build this central week-to-week mystery, they didn't drip feed enough.
Yes.
So that was my problem. I as a whole, it was kind of cool. Like the singular one being split into two, but I kind of guessed parts of that already. I was kind of actually guessing that it was like more the one force good, one force bad, but actually it was that one force split into two and both can be good or bad depending on the thing. So that was, again, cool.
Yeah. It's a little bit more nature versus nurture. Like
exactly.
You know, again, I mentioned that word in the Star Wars universe. They're called a dyad, something that is formed, and one's good, one's bad. When the two come together, they form a whole kind of thing. That's the dyad. This isn't a dyad. Both of them were born. Both of them were created from one. They are exactly the same, and one is turned to the dark side, and one might be turned to the light.
But the thing is, as
well, and you start out the series thinking one's in the light. And the other one's the dark side.
They've turned because of the events or just the perception of things. So, I mean, I like that nature nurture thing. It's not like, I look evil, therefore I'm going to be a Sith.
Exactly.
It's just, there are these external factors, like ultimately with the creation of Anakin, and Darth Vader. Yeah. So, like, it's really consistent. It's really good. Really enjoying it. But it just, as I say, because it's aimed at this reveal, like you say, it just feels like wasted episode. So, I mean, even for me, seeing the stranger, Khmer, he was one of the best bits of this, because really mysterious, the sort of the shadowy figure, the hand, moving the chess pieces in terms of May here. This notion of almost like a proto Sith, again, loads of different things to his possible origins, like this huge scar on his back, and certainly linked with Venestra as being, Venestra's Padawan.
That's right.
But nothing really concrete comes from it. And you could see him kind of being the best bits were where he's on his the planet where he's with Osha, and he realizes he's not got May, and just almost the manipulation with which he tries to bring her round. But I just felt like there was so much more that you needed to understand about this this person, the stranger. And Darth Plagueis was there. So that means, there's now suddenly 3. There's more than 2. And normally the Sith are in pairs, and then they will kill their master in order to then become the master and take on an apprentice. So is this, what's going on? Is effectively this a threesome, or is this a twosome with Quimir and Osha, and he doesn't know that?
Or is he just discovering it there at the end of the episode? Like, it's really hard to keep talking about Darth Plagueis because he is literally in there for 3 seconds. I missed him on first watch because he's in the darkness and shadows, and I was watching on my phone. It was only when I saw the internet going, oh wow, he's there in the background. Yeah. That's Darth Plagueis. Yeah. Just for those of you that don't know, and a lot of us don't know from Star Wars.
Come on,
lore.
to be fair, I had to find out off the internet who this yellow-eyed guy. I was like, oh, exactly. He's a Sith. What does this mean? Yeah. Because they don't. It's just a guy in the background.
Exactly. And he's always been a guy in the background. He's never been seen before in live action. He has had a novel, I think, in the extended universe, which no longer exists, but he has had a novel, and he was mentioned in one line of dialogue by Palpatine, by Emperor Palpatine, when trying to turn Anakin, that he's the one that discovered how to create life from death. That is the only real line in all the series. And the other thing we know about him is that Palpatine was his Padawan, and he killed him. So what it does throw up, but stop me here if I'm going way too crazy on the theories of what might happen in the future, but what it does throw up is Quimir a really young version of Emperor Palpatine? And he actually, somehow Palpatine returned that whole thing in the end. Maybe Palpatine is here right in front of us looking like Quimir, and then he turns himself into looking a bit more like the senator of Naboo in the future. You never know. You just never. That's how he hides himself out in 100 years' time.
You never know. And I mean,
so maybe that explains how he could possibly have had a child, as everybody was saying about Emperor Palpatine. When we find out that he's had children, you go, how did he ever have sex? Oh, well, he looked like Quimir when he was younger.
Yeah. Well, exactly, yeah. Like, I mean, as I say, I think just for me, I wanted the immersiveness in their stories and the Old Republic. Yes, the central mystery is good, but in a sense, it played too much of a first fiddle to actually understanding some of the motivations and so on of these characters, because most of them died, and secondly, who's to say that given Plagueis is kind of looking fairly creepily from the shadows, that Quimir is not going to die very quickly in a second season if they get one. So there's a whole sense of stuff being lost here, and I felt, it's immerses in the Old Republic with, a good story, which I think the central mystery is, but structurally to me, it's just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look, for me, I'm just gonna, because I know we do want to go into other saber points. Coming into the show, I expected Andor in the Old Republic.
Oh, okay. Right.
I was expecting a more mature piece about the Acolyte, because they said this was about the dark side Acolytes. And I was like, oh, cool, you're going to give us like a gritty dark side kind of student master piece, almost like Lone Wolf kind of, and like a more, say, a Japanese style, like Lone Wolf and Cub, but more about a dark Padawan, or a Padawan being turned to darkness, that like become an Acolyte. I was like, this is going to be gritty and real. And I feel, unfortunately, they missed that step. They had the options there to really go into some of the dark side of the Star Wars universe. You could have gone more into, tell us about the witches, show how the Jedi were not always the good guys back when they became and did some of the dark things that they did, which we know about. They did, like, they did take young force sensitive children to train them as Padawans. We know the Jedi weren't always, they were good guys, but sometimes they were corrupt policemen or hid things or things. You could have gone more into that, and I feel they just they started to trickle and then just pulled back a bit too much in thematically. I think that's where we miss these beat to beats and they rehash things where we're like, no, we got that in the first set. You didn't need to show us again.
Exactly. Yeah. You didn't need to have your major character telling a story and which was a lie and then showing that story on screen in the third episode.
Yeah,
As I said, that was my real downfall, and I wasn't sure after episode 3 whether it would come back for me. It did in episode 5, but episode 5 and episode 6, are where we lose lots of named Jedi. It's a great way to set up Chimera the Stranger. It's a great way to set him up as being massively powerful as he hunts them all down in the forest. But you have an actress like Daphne Keane who was in Logan and was in the Golden Compass series. A very well known actress who's been talking about her role in the show for ages, and then she's just slaughtered. She has a big moment in that episode, absolutely. But had these been characters that you'd watched a season of in the old Republic of Star Wars, getting to know them all, and then this happens and brings out a Sith where he kills all these characters that you're really attached to, that'd be a big thing, but I felt like they hadn't done enough of the attachment part of that.
No, that's what I mean. Sometimes I just feel that the way a lot of shows go is like, we have to keep everything hidden.
Yeah.
And the big reveal is something really, actually, in the end, not that big.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder were they trying to avoid some of the more controversial sides of things? The easiest allegory here is that the Jedi Order had become organized religion at the time, and groups like the Witches are the first peoples or the First Nations that were overrun by this massive organization that goes, if you don't believe in our religion, then you're wrong and you have to die, effectively. So that's where they could have gone and never really got there.
But it was there implicitly in it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's there, but maybe if they'd leaned into that a bit more, it would have made it a bit more punchy or maybe a bit more interesting, I guess, for the early part of the season.
So, just one very quick one, and again, this has not been explained. It is, they never even touch on it, but it's right in front of your eyes. The Wookiee Master, he is taken over by the Witches. We find that out in the reveal, right? And then he is freed. Skip forward to when he has died and he is living alone on this planet. He is drawing the same markings that is from the Witches. He draws and does all their symbols. He's left the Jedi Order. He's gone into exile.
Yeah.
They never even talk about it.
No. Yeah.
He exiled himself and then started to focus on the witches' religion.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a really interesting kind of point.
It is.
And then he gets killed by the stranger.
Yeah.
Never gets talked about. Never. Exactly. We don't even get to hear from him. And they focus on him drawing the symbol on May's head. Mm-hmm. That is what he's done. But again, that's never even, and that's why I feel sometimes they might have dropped some things.
Yeah.
I feel they might have edited out, and it may be suffering from that, because if they were to talk about that and show, the Wookiee being, living and kind of, I don't know, telling us why he left and why he feels so bad, why he's gone into that over a season, and then kill him off.
Yeah.
That's where you earn that payment.
Exactly.
And I feel they skipped show, end, and then told.
But it's something that nobody else is going to investigate that character again. We're never going to see someone ask the question about why was Kanaka so taken with that religion? Why did he turn away from the Jedi Order? That this was the season to show that. This was the season to discuss that. It was very cool though to have Soatamu back playing Kalnaka, who played Chewbacca in the later movies after Peter Mayhew passed away. It's kind of cool to have him back in the Wookiee outfit.
Absolutely.
there.
And fight with a lightsaber.
Yeah,
it was really good.
That was cool.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to say is, Amandla Stenberg, who plays May and Osha, she really does get the distinction between the two. It's really good, and doing that for the whole season.
Yeah. Even when they're doing the cup game a couple of times, as an audience member, where they're putting May in one outfit that she looks like Osha, even then you can tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. Yeah. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Could we talk about her as we go on to the second point about where she ends up? Because I think distinctively what they've done to that character and the ending, as an actress, was fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, Saber Point 2 is all about the ending. Let's move on there. So yes, the final choices as we get the reveal of the central mystery, which has been going round quite a lot throughout the season, and we've talked about a lot. The final choices that were made at the end of the season. The big moment, I guess, is when Osha finally hears the truth revealed from Saul that she goes Sith, she goes bad, and kills Saul, and then bleeds into her kyber crystal, turning it to red. That's massive, and again, something that we've seen before. Myself and Chris definitely, as gamers, have seen that in the Jedi video games, as blood drives the kyber crystal to turn it to red. It's very cool in a video game. Very cool to see this for the first time in live action, and seeing it from a character that you've followed along in the story as being your good guy, your central hero in the show, whether, as you learn that Saul's actually not the hero you think he is, you're still on the side of Osha, that she's the hero of the show, and seeing her bleed into the kyber crystal to turn it red. There's lots of great moments there with that, I think.
Yeah, and it's an awesome moment. Mm-hmm. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's cool. I
loved it.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about the arc that was in the Skywalker saga of Anakin Skywalker becoming Sith and becoming Darth Vader. A lot of people, myself included, not sure whether that stuck the landing of why he would go so bad in Revenge of the Sith. Here with Osha, you're going, oh, I actually understand here why she is so angry at Saul, the person that she trusted most from the Jedi Order, why she's so angry at him and feeds into the dark side, I guess.
And he even kicked her from the Order. Like, she left, but it reveals in the final episode that he pushed her to go because she would have been too old to even become a Jedi, because they knew, even taking her in, that she was too old to become a Padawan.
Right.
To be taken as a young one. And I look, the bleed for me to turning her to the Sith, turning her to the dark side, I feel was fantastic. Yeah. Like, what felt less earned was making May, flipping her back to being essentially Osha, because they just wipe her memory of everything. Yeah. And now if we get season 2, which I think might be likely.
I think it's likely.
Osha's now the good, May's now the good, Osha's now the bad. They've basically flipped to a degree, because they've just basically made May the blank slate to who doesn't know doesn't have many memories. She doesn't know really what happened. She has some memories of the death and things like that. Didn't know she had a sister anymore.
Well, Vernestra revealed that to her. So I think it's more...
Exactly.
Osha's made her choice. She's going off to train with Kamir. She's going off to train in the ways of the Sith. The alternate version, let's say, in the Jedi. I'm not too sure whether Sith has even been said in the show, but May is wiped and left with the Jedi. At the end, at this end point of the show, but I'm not too sure it's as definitive as it seemed to be at the start of the season, that May's on the good side and Osha's on the bad, because we know all the other stuff about what's going on with the Jedi. So, it's a great way to finish off the season, and I hope there's more of that story to come in the future. Hope we are going to get to see a second season. I think it's reasonably likely. San Diego Comic-Con's coming up just as we're about to finish off the show, and then Star Wars Celebration coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So they are much slower at Disney to announce shows than they were in the past. So so it's very likely that if there was an announcement, you hold that off for San Diego Comic-Con or for Celebration if it's only a couple of weeks away from the end of the series, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I did think they were going to meld. I thought, because it was the convergence and their whole thing is from 2 to 1 and 1 to 2. I did think there was going to be this, when they were hugging, something was going to happen under the tree where I was like, oh, will the Force come and like make them one? And
squeeze them back together.
Are they going to be like, they are the epitome of the grey Jedi. They are good and bad, and both of them can be good and bad at the same time. Something like that. I think maybe that's the future. Maybe like they'll split them and her lightsaber will be blue and red at like half and half kind of thing.
I mean, even I think just the fact that, May got the symbol on her forehead, because she went through the ceremony, and it's like,
Ascension,
it didn't really matter. There was nothing that really seemed to come of that.
Well, it was just her declaring her commitment to her mom and the Witch Order.
The importance then of seeing the Wookiee Jedi, drawing these as well. That they do have meanings. There is some powerful significance here because the Jedi were trying to prevent the other one from going through this ceremony because
the death of mere witches can do stuff that Jedi can't. Like, we know that from the games.
Yeah.
Like, there's teleportation, there's like force tunnels. There's definitely things that they do that theoretically maybe a Jedi could if they trained, but like the witches do stuff Jedi don't.
Yeah.
So I was expecting part of that, but that never really kind of manifested.
It's just said because we're seeing a lot of it from the perspective of the Jedi. It's just said they're very powerful for what they've done. But the reason they stopped Osha going through it is because if Osha goes through that, she's committed herself to another order. They can't take her away like all Jedi do with young
she did
children,
want to become a Jedi.
Wanted to become a Jedi. Yeah.
I mean, but I like the fact that Osha goes to train with Camille here. Like, I think Camille, the stranger, I do like the fact that he was known as Smilo Ren as well because of the helmet and the smile. The kind
absolutely love that.
Toothy smile.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. Because I think he is the coolest character, at least for me anyway, in the show, along with Sol. I really like Sol's character, and I do like May and Osha as well. But I think Camille just shows that it almost feels like an organic way of becoming the Sith. Obviously something happened which we didn't find out about. But it's the fact that he didn't just kill Osha when he realized that it had been switched. You got the sense of, you did get the sense of him trying to mentor her, really. And that, it was just, this is the alternative way. So again, to that whole religious point, these are the kind of, I guess, if you want to come at it from this angle, these are the Protestants, effectively. They're protesting against whatever, or I don't know.
The Lutherans.
Or the Lutherans,
I take it bigger than that. It's probably Christianity versus Buddhism or
something like that, whatever it is.
Because Career comes across as just, he's free.
Yeah, exactly.
The Jedi is about rules and regulations and control and setting up their form of society. Kabir is introduced in a classic way, just like Jackie Chan in Drunken Master, basically. You don't suspect who this character is, the guy who's drunk, asleep, when May comes in and wakes him up. He's just the sidekick to her, and then you see the big reveal that actually he is the Jedi Master, effectively the Sith Master. So he's introduced in this chilled out way. He's got his own place. Has a great answer for everything that, every question that Osha has for him. He's living off the land. He's totally happy with himself, and he's been inside the Jedi Order, as we find out by the end of the series. So he's not just trying to darkly manipulate somebody in front of him. He's saying, look at the life I chose to have after the Jedi. With May having her mind wiped at the end of the series, that is her saying to Osha, that the question that she posed to Osha, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You do what you want to do. What is it that you want? What's the thing you want to do? Yeah. And what she wants to do is keep her safe and go off and explore this side, the other side, the non-Jedi side. So that way that she gives the choice to May and is willingly accepts having her mind wiped, I thought it was a really good arc for her story as well.
Yeah, and the stranger is cool. His helmet's cool. Yeah. His outfit's cool. His lightsaber's cool. The kind of cuts into two, and it's a smaller version,
like a dagger. Almost. Yeah, or the classic sort of Japanese katana and the dagger.
Yeah, exactly. And look, that looked fantastic. Yeah. And the actor who plays him, fantastic.
Yeah, from the good place. That's so cool. He is the absolute proper bimbo or himbo from the good place for the first couple of seasons, or he's a major character in there. But I just did not expect that was him in this show. He's really good.
Like the reveal for me was, so I want to know more, and this is like by the end of this season, I want to know more about the Acolyte and the Master.
Yeah,
what happens in season 2 between these two as they journey it down the darkened path. I'm genuinely interested in seeing.
Yeah.
Because he is, as you guys have said, he has a mystery background.
Yeah.
Why is he the way he doesn't? He kind of tries to draw her in. But then also, with his helmet is a shield. It is a sensory deprivation. So he's just him in the Force, but also stops people sensing him as well. And it's so interesting because when Osha puts that on, like, we get that her power expands and she's able to see the future to a degree as well. And I'm like, oh, that gets so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the big thing that everyone has talked about is these helmets are obviously quite similar to Kylo Ren's and the Knights of Ren. So apparently part of this as well, it falls down years later, is found by the Knights of the Ren and how they do things.
Oh, maybe.
Which is really interesting. But overall, love the Stranger as a character.
He's so cool. Yeah, so cool.
Definitely.
Really enjoyed him in the show. And one of the other major characters in the show, Master Vernestra, one of the only surviving Jedi, actually, that we meet, now that I think about it. A really interesting character because she's kept so far away from the central story. She's the one that's back at the Jedi Council, I guess, back in Coruscant. She's kept away from everything that's going on. She's the one that chooses to create this lie when she finds out what's actually happened. She's the one that chooses to cover it all up, really to avoid investigation into the Jedi Order. So maybe there's more of that to come as to why she made that decision here. But it seems like, hang on a second, I have an opportunity here to tie this all up in a neat little package, present it to the world like this was just one bad Jedi in our order, and close it all off here. It's one character that I felt needed a bit more development, and definitely. One thing that I would definitely not have gotten from watching the show at all. The reason they keep mentioning that she gets space sick is in the book that she originally appeared in. When she travels through intergalactic space, she has visions of the past and the future. Did you guys get that at all?
No.
So when she arrives on the planet where Saul has just been killed, she arrives on the planet, she gets an echo, a force echo, effectively, of everything, of the entire tale laid out in front of her. So that's why she knows everything that's happening. But that's why they keep mentioning this space sickness that she gets. Oh, did you actually go on a spaceship? Oh, how are you feeling? Have you still got a headache? They mention it so many times, but I wouldn't have gotten it from the show at all. That this is part of her force powers, effectively, is that she can see the future and the past if she travels through hyperspace, effectively. So, so there's all of that. There is, why did she make this choice to hide the Jedi from scrutiny, effectively? So,
and to hide the presence of Khmer as well, who watches her.
And he's got the reason why he's got the deprivation helmet on is, one of the reasons for that is to block her from having her visions and seeing him. So when he's not wearing the helmet, she can sense that he's there. So she senses him the minute she gets on the planet. So a little echo of Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi there as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes, because they do set up that mystery and they start setting up the Senate versus the Jedi,
exactly,
which we've seen play out different ways before. Yeah. But again, political power versus religious power, or I say government versus police.
Exactly, and in 100 years' time, as we've seen in the prequel trilogy, really, the Jedi and Senate work quite closely together until the Emperor does release.
There's a fracture coming, and then that fracture is fixed. And
it's only 100 years as well. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, how all of these things start to pull together, I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it. She goes to one of her masters, Yoda.
Yeah.
That should have been introduced earlier.
Well, yeah.
I think, but like, they should have got, like, at least, rather than just, we all know who Yoda is. We all know what he looks like. So just showing the back, I think they should have walked in on the council and you show the council. and kind of like, we have an issue. Mm-hmm. There is a disturbance in the balance. They need to set up a bit more there, and maybe they haven't wrote it yet. Maybe that could be the issue. Or they don't know where they're going. But for me, they've set up this character like, oh, she's connected to him. She's blocking this. Why not tease where that's going? Because at the moment, it's resolved. That's the problem.
Yeah, but I think there's a very good reason why you do that, because you don't want to have a show that steps all over the legacy of Yoda. You don't want to have a show where Yoda's complicit in hiding this information about the Jedi. So you want this character that you don't really know that well, Master Finestra, you want her to be the one that covers up the whole idea that Sith could be back in the universe or back in the galaxy. Okay. You want to cover all that up so nobody knows about it. At the end of the series, it's all wiped clean, and now she's going to Yoda. I think that actual conversation, if you'd had another couple of lines, all it would be is the Senator starting to suspect there's something wrong with the Jedi Order and want to investigate it. How do I deal with this, Master Yoda? I think that's the actual conversation. But if you bring Yoda in earlier on, and he's complicit in what she's doing here, you've got a big change to your Yoda character, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that literally could be why they did it. But it for me, the conclusions of this and where they set up all the characters, I'm interested to see season 2. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's
definitely
the big part from the big nailing solution is they've done the right thing in terms of the scene setting for the end.
Exactly.
And that one thing, I do want to move us on to Saber Point number 3.
Yes, let's move on to our third and final Saber Point for this episode. Yes, the final Saber Point is really just about the actors, the characters, the setting, overall, and, you know, the battles. We've talked a bit about some of them there, but as we went through, here, we've talked about some of the major actors. Some really classic performance, some really good performances in here. John, you mentioned earlier on about Saul, Master Saul, carrying the series, really, Lee Jong-jae, carrying the series. He was such a good actor in Squid Game, where he is from Korea originally. That it was all delivered in Korean, and apparently got the role because of his time in Squid Game and learnt English for the show. He's not a native English speaker.
Wow, that's amazing.
He learnt as filming started, he had only learnt his lines in English for the first episode or the first part of filming, let's say. And by the end of the series, he was able to deliver all of his lines. But that's how good he was in Squid Game. He could get across the emotion of that character going through everything that he was going through. And now he's playing a Jedi, a conflicted Jedi, throughout the series and holding the show. That's fascinating to me that he was able to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought he was excellent. And I think the three main principal characters, you know, Lee Jung-jae, Amanda Stenberg, and Manny Jacinto, I thought these three actors were absolutely superb. Really? And that's why I also want to see a season 2. I think they're really good. You know, as I say, I think with Dean Charles Chapman as Torben, I think it was just the character. Yeah. There wasn't anything wrong with the performance per se, but it just felt strange. And again, it was just like, there you go, you know? Yeah. And I guess as well, it's maybe just sometimes the format, you know, if you had had a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie, this may have been a really different proposition.
I totally agree with you. I was even thinking about this today with them being released episodically. I love weekly shows. You guys know that. I've mentioned that all the time. With it being weekly shows, people were dropping off after a few episodes because it wasn't delivering a universe they felt they were connected to. That's what I certainly got from some of the criticism by Star Wars fans, not the ones that, you know, rated it 1 without watching an episode, the ones that stuck with it for a few episodes, you know. But if you were going to the cinema to watch a Star Wars movie, you absolutely would watch all 2.5 hours of that movie and then make up your mind at the end of it when you walk out of the cinema what you thought of it. You wouldn't walk out after 15 minutes and go, not for me. Nobody does that with Star Wars movies, right? So it's a different idea. And that's why I think the format of the show would have worked really well if you were telling a Star Wars story, a mystery like this, where people have to sit and watch to the end. But nobody is under any obligation to sit down and watch an 8-episode series if they choose that's not for them because it's not revealing and it doesn't feel like the universe. But the actors were doing such a great job. I thought Carrie-Anne Moss was really good in her background role. When you thought she was going to be, you thought she was going to be a major character, but in her background role, she delivered her guidance so well and felt like part of the universe. Really, really good in that role as well. But yeah, some good stuff. Anybody else that stood out to you? Anything else you'd say to you?
The battles, I think, like you said. I mean, I think certainly Camilla versus the Jedi in the forest, absolutely fantastic. Jedis falling like flies here.
It was like everybody got a moment out of it as well. Though.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it because, that's the thing, in a sense. That's what I liked about this character. So ruthless in battle, yet seemingly, and maybe that's just being drawn in by the Sith, and maybe that's the point, and maybe that'll be something that you get from a season 2. But then just, you would say silver-tongued, in a sense.
Yeah.
But you get from this, because you have that preconception around Sith or proto-Sith or whatever, but you're seeing it play out with the Jedi, that they are equally as silver-tongued.
Yes.
And I really liked that moment. On the sisters fight, I found it weird that Carrie-Anne Moss's character somehow killed literally the entire coven from some trance that they were doing. I really didn't understand that.
It's like, is it like unplugging the internet?
It felt like, exactly.
Do you know what it was? It was unplugging them from the Matrix while they're still connecting. No, remember, pulling them out where they're in the Matrix.
It was exactly that. Like, they were in some
call.
Trance.
I feel like they were all pushing their power through the central sister, and when she died, they all died. That's what I feel happens actually on Sol's head, that they died.
No, but I thought it was coming from Carrie-Anne Moss. I thought she kind of did something with her, flicked her head, and then next thing they're all dead. I think the main thing with Sol is that he kills Osha's mother.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
The main thing.
Yeah. They're all in a trance together, you're right.
And I felt that was weird.
Yeah.
I didn't kind of understand why or what was happening.
It's effectively genocide, though. I know that sounds really bad, but that's effectively what it was that you just did there. Yeah.
Actually, so I really enjoyed the Galaxy of the High Republic. That setting. Really good. I'm just wondering, is it, and it's playing with preconceived notions of what you think around the Sith and the Jedi.
Yeah.
But you want that also to be mentioned. And you don't really get a sense on it. I mean, even if it was that, so yes, Yoda, you don't want him to be complicit, but even if you had him in the council going, I sense that we are sort of straying from the path of what the Jedi is we've become too corrupted ourselves by power, and that can only lead to the dark side, or whatever.
Absolutely, but that's what he does in Phantom Menace 100 years later. That's effectively where he is. He's realizing that the Jedi may have strayed far from the path. That is the realization he comes to. You're absolutely right. But I do think you're right. One of the things that is very different about the story is you're starting out with 4 Jedi going off doing scientific experiments on a planet. They discover this group of people that are there. And by the end of the series, what you realize is they've exterminated them all, taken one of their children, left them all for dead, covered it all up, which justifies the murders of the 4 Jedi. You realize they are the bad guys. Each one of them played their part. And that's the other bit that I think is important to talk about, because it felt almost like, I don't know, it felt like a slasher movie. It felt like Freddy Krueger, or it felt like Jason. You have each one of the Jedi Masters being murdered for their part in this plot that ended off with the death of May's mother. And then finally Osha finding out about that plot and killing the last member of the group. So it felt like that was taking inspiration, let's say, from slasher movies, which I loved. I loved that idea. I think that's really good. And by the end of it, I didn't feel bad for the fact that those Jedis were being killed for their part in what they did, which is when you go in with the preconceived notion that all Jedi are the good guys in the galaxy and all the other species, the Sith, the witches are all bad guys in the galaxy. That's a good turn to accomplish by the end of the series.
Absolutely.
So, so I thought that was quite cool. And then the last one I just want to mention about the battles in the show, just because we only finished doing the boys and we had a scene where we had Annie January fighting herself in the final episode. We also have the sisters fighting against each other. So another scene where we have one actress fighting herself as well.
Yeah, excellent stuff.
Excellent.
The battles were really on point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last 2 cents on this is the High Republic, the Old Republic. I want to see more of that, like John said. Yeah. I want to see more, like, there is the Guardian Jedi, the Counselor Jedi, the different orders of the Order of the Jedi. Like, they do different roles, and, like, they're, like, then there's the Knights, who are the more, like, the military arm. Like, that is the interesting part of when they were at their highest, the High Republic. They all do these different things. So a scientific study makes sense when they are these particular order within it. So and they all had different lightsaber colors and different, so seeing that and by the way, there were also very cool droids back then and different style of ships, which we saw. So all of these things is why I'm bought into that era, to see more of that, because that's stuff that's either only been written about in the books and you're like, so you're imagining a lot of it yourself, or you've seen some of it in comic books or the video games. So seeing how these come out in future seasons will be super interesting.
I think that's a really good point, Chris. It's kind of let's just go into final thoughts on the Acolyte as a season, just to kind of wrap up our overall thoughts. One of the things that just leads into my final thoughts, Chris, I'd love if they were able to have established the Old Republic with this first show set in the Old Republic.
Yeah.
Because in fairness, not very many Star Wars fans have actually read any of the Old Republic books. A very small proportion of them have played the video games, especially as we talked about at the beginning. The Old Republic games are over 20 years old now as well, and hard to get. So very few people know much about the Old Republic. So if you're going to establish the world in the Old Republic, I think The Acolyte was not the show to do that. I think if you did The Acolyte, set it in the modern era in amongst all the stuff we know about in the familiar part of Star Wars, it actually probably would have worked better for most people, because people wouldn't have been expecting as much out of it, or would have expected that it would tie in a little bit more with the universe that we know. Whereas setting it so far back and it being the first time that most viewers will have seen the Old Republic, you're expecting more from it. You're expecting to have, exactly as you said, Chris, what's the setup of the Jedi Order right now? We didn't see that at all. No. What's the setup of the universe? What's Coruscant actually like? You want to know all that stuff. And I think if you'd started out building that universe with a different show and then set Acolyte there, probably would have worked a lot better for me. But this being the first show, I'm worried that people haven't got the taste of that universe and aren't going to be coming back for all the ancillary, interesting stories that can be told in that galaxy now. It wasn't as exciting a start to that universe as A New Hope was, or Star Wars Episode 4 was. Yeah. John, overall, what do you think of the Acolyte Season 1?
Yeah, I mean, do you know, I would give this 3.5 sultry, sexy Siths out of 5. And by God, I would want 5 of those sultry, sexy Siths.
Shirtless Siths.
And shirtless as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, there's a lot I liked about this. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot that I don't understand the choices. Mm-hmm. I almost feel this would have been better off to have been as a cinematic movie to really get that epic and the scope of it. Yeah. I thought there was some really good stuff in here that I really enjoyed. The witches, the 3 central characters, absolutely fantastic. The central premise of it, really. Mm-hmm. I think the issues came around just the ordering of some of the episodes, the 2 flashbacks, some of the choices made around the rationale for their actions, in particular Torben,
But he's like Anakin, he's annoying and a teenager.
No, I know, but you've not had enough time with him. You know,
with a lot less time with Anakin. But anyway, I know what you mean. I take your point.
Do you know? And
sand, it gets everywhere.
It had some. It really, it played with your preconceptions around the good and evil of Jedi and Sith. It played with those preconceived notions. But I don't know. There's just something. As I say, the first 4 episodes, I was really just kind of going, I just don't know there is to care about here. And even on the final episode, I had to watch the ending of it twice because I was like, so what's happened here?
Exactly.
I was like, what?
Yeah. This feels like something great when it's written down on your writing pad to write towards if you're a writer. But it feels like if you'd seeded that a bit more throughout the series, so we understand it when it gets to the final episode, it helps us all along the way.
I think to the point, the upending of different preconceived notions, the sheer points, or just the reversal of fortune, that switching things up, really, really good. Absolutely loved that. But I think, it didn't necessarily needed to have been played as a bang, here's the big twist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it could have just twisted itself along quite nicely.
Well, yeah.
Quite explicitly.
Yeah.
Through the episodes.
But as Chris, I think you said as well, Chris, having those cliffhangers at the end of each episode to go, ooh, something's not what it seems here, to take you along with the mystery, because that's what mystery shows do. They give you something to hang on to at the end of each episode that will allow you to get on to the next one.
Totally agreed. But what I mean is, so even just bringing a Pelagius sort of spindly hand out in episode 2. Rather than the final episode.
Can you imagine if they did that in episode 2 and then didn't show them the other 6? Their minds would just blow
But
up.
I think my point is that they should have.
Yeah.
They absolutely should have shown his reasoning for being there on the screen with his spindly hand in effectively.
But they won't show that until the end of season 2. That'll be his 2 seconds at the end of season 2.
Otherwise, you never get to it.
Yeah, agreed.
But Chris, what did you think overall of The Acolyte season 1?
I'm kind of somewhere a bit less than both of you. I'm okay to good on this. So I do a 2.5 to 3 out of 5. I went in with a lot more preconceptions of what this would be based on some of the comics and some of the games and what the options of this. And again, as I said, I thought this was going to be more Andor than say more Ahsoka, which is again, and I liked Ahsoka. And this was good to okay. Okay to good, I should actually kind of brand that. I feel a lot of the points were there. And as a whole, when you get to the end, it's good. But they just miss some story beats, or maybe there's some weird edits, and this is what we do. We talk about a lot of these shows. So I don't think I'm like an expert, but I definitely understand how the threads of 8 episode series should kind of be written and kind of pointed and packaged. I feel it missed some of those marks.
Agreed, totally, Chris. And if you're going to change that format, no problem at all. Change that format. That's deadly, but make sure it works.
Exactly.
Even if you're trying to throw everything up in the air like they are at this show, if you're going to throw everything up in the air to make a different show than people expect, excellent, but make sure it bloody works in the way you decide to create it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that it missed the mark on some of these.
Yeah.
I'm very much interested in season 2. That's the thing. I will end, my final point is, my kind of wrap up is, I want to see season 2 now. I want to see, they've set up something that's going to be good. And for any gamers, this is Assassin's Creed to Assassin's Creed 2.
Right.
This is A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back.
Maybe, yeah.
It's something good that has the possibility to be absolutely great in the next installment. And I think if they lean into the things that worked and kind of phase out some of the things that didn't, I think we're in for quite a good thing in about 2 or 3 years. Probably about 2 years. But again, we'll find out in a couple of days. San Diego Comic-Con is in a couple of days, and then D23 is in a couple of weeks. We'll get some form of announcement, be it good or bad, and we'll see. But now the unfortunate thing is, the next installment is going to be the Skeleton Crew, and that takes us right back to the Skywalker saga era. So we're going to be jumping out of the High Republic for at least a while.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We'll see.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. Thanks so much for joining us for our podcast about The Acolyte. I'm going to take it off, guys. Thanks so much for joining me for this one. I'm going to take it off with the rest of our fellow Acolytes and chat about their feedback on the last couple of episodes, because I know you both got to go.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone for joining us for this beautiful discussion. I can't wait to hear what your thoughts were, fellow Acolytes, and we'll speak to you very soon in a galaxy far, far away for whatever will be the new Star Wars podcast discussions. Find out when we get dates of Skeleton Crew and/or in the future. Who knows? Yeah. It's a galaxy a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away is when we'll know.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, great chatting all things about the Acolyte, fellow Acolytes. Love that, fellow Acolytes. Makes you sound so important. But yeah, thank you so much, fellow Acolytes, for joining us for this season 1 discussion on the Acolyte.
Yeah. Okay, as I said, the guys had to go, unfortunately, so they didn't have a chance to stay with us to do the feedback, but I'm here with our wonderful fellow Acolytes with their thoughts on the Acolyte finale. First up, Alex Baelish says, I thought this was a great setup for season 2. I think since this is so dark and the Jedi are portrayed to me as foolish or dumb, almost like stormtroopers with the way they just run in with lightsabers in hand, I actually started to dislike them. Maybe that's what they were going for, since this is focused on the Sith. Master Vanestra was not my favourite character, but I hope season 2 will make her more likeable. It was so sad that they killed every single person that we started this series with, Walking Dead style. I feel since this is not a complete show and it being Sith focused, it's getting a bit of a bad rap. That's an interesting point, Alex. Yeah, like you heard our thoughts there on why, I suppose why I feel it was getting a bit of a bad rap as a show. But there are ways that I suppose it could have gone that wouldn't have got to have a bad rap. I don't think it's specifically because it's Sith focused. But yeah, it just felt weird that there were so many named characters just were killed off in one episode. Definitely. But yeah, let's hope there is a season 2 coming up that allows us to explore the characters that are still alive a bit more. Thanks very much for that, Alex. We also got some feedback in from Dr. Bob Phillips, who said, not quite how I expected the show to turn out, and that's not a bad thing, with 2 twists that possibly seal this as a capsule story, letting us stay questioning the premise of the Jedi-Sith binary or allowing for a season 2. The performance of Saul, tortured by a single terrible misjudgment, was brilliant, as was the dual May-Osha work, and Sexy Sith wasn't bad either. Totally with you there, Bob. Adam Bruton said, they couldn't really help themselves that last shot. Sigh. Yeah, I guess that's the appearance of Yoda right at the end. Joe Herbert says, cool lightsaber fights, but unfortunately another disappointing Star Wars season for me. My wife doesn't usually get too agitated by shows, but this finale bugged her, and when it ended, her summary was, that just made no sense. I thought Osha's story was poorly done. She went from not being able to use the Force to save her own life early in the season to putting on the toothy helmet, and bam, Darth Sexy can hardly get near her. What happened there? She went from not letting her old pal Saul kill a rampaging murderer a few episodes ago to suddenly force choking Saul to death after barely hearing what happened. They clearly wanted to show how she turned to the dark side, but it was not well executed for me. May's arc wasn't much better either. She ends up only remembering when she was 8. 2 full episodes of flashbacks and they still didn't explain to what happened to May. How did she survive? Why didn't the Jedi apparently not try to retrieve her body? When did she meet Khmer? Why did Saul make such terrible decisions back then? The show didn't seem to know what it really wanted to be. It was dark and violent, and then it's got Reset Pip shooting oil and Osha in the finale like a kid's show. A whole group of Jedi are following a little sniffling creature around like they're useless without it. It has incredible fight scenes. Then in the middle of the finale, we're on Coruscant introducing a senator. I can't wait for Andor to return. Maybe the next season of Mando will be good. Here's hoping. Yeah, seems like very, very disappointed there, Joe. I think there are really good things about the show, but yeah, there's a couple of things that didn't really match up to what I'd hope to see in a Star Wars season. Definitely, lightsaber battles were very cool, though. But I think you know, as I say, on watching it through for the second time all in a row, I think it matches up a lot more closely than I thought it did the first time I watched it, when I was watching it week to week and leaving the full gap of a week between the episodes. So maybe there's a bit more. Maybe we may have highlighted some of the things that came out of the show that may not have been highlighted as well when you watched it the first time. Maybe that might help, Joe. But thanks very much for your feedback. Coffee and Vodka sent in a message to us. He says, Chekhov's Force dyad ended up broken and unfired. The show's premise, if any, lost down a blind alley. The one lesson learnt, never bring the homesick prone or those with a Padawan fetish on an away mission. Cool jewels and fight scenes with excellent acting in an aimless tale. 2 sundered sabers, twisted sisters, and treacherous trackers out of 5. Ooh, yeah, I think that's probably the lowest rating that you've given to any of the shows that we've covered. Coffee and Vodka, yeah. I know it wasn't really clicking for you as well during the season, and I'm the same. It's definitely not up there with the best of the Star Wars shows. And as I say, my big question in my head, and something that we'll never really know, is I wonder if they'd done a more straightforward show in the Old Republic, would this have stood out as a better show once we had an established universe around it, as it was, focusing on all the characters without knowing the established universe around it at this time in the Old Republic. Maybe that didn't do it any favours at all. Finally, Alan Thomas says, I really quite liked the finale. Definitely better than some earlier episodes, but not as good as episode 6 of the show. 4 Virginses out of 5. Very good, Alan. Yeah, as I said, I think the end worked really well for me, and by the end of the season as we got there, I think it overall worked really well, so glad you enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for your feedback. I know there was some other feedback that came in on each individual episode over on the Facebook group as well. If you want to go check that out, pop over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, or if you want to send in any thoughts that you have on The Acolyte, you can always email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and you can have a chat with me about it. Thanks so much for joining us. We will be back next week with our coverage of Deadpool and Wolverine, going back to the cinema to watch Marvel's Deadpool and Wolverine. Looking forward to that. And we have just recorded and released the Boys wrap up. If you've watched season 4 of The Boys, we have every episode covered on tvpodcastindustries.com as well. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast over there on tvpodcastindustries.com to get access to all the shows that we'll be covering in the future. But I will return to John and Chris one last time for them to say a farewell as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Schnick, schnick.
Yes, thanks so much, fellow Acolytes, for joining us for this Season 1 discussion. Really great to have this chat with yourselves until the next season of Acolyte. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, don't bleed any kyber crystals.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.